The small Baltic nation of Lithuania is facing a migrant crisis. A state of emergency has been declared after hundreds crossed the border from neighbouring Belarus this year, more than the past 3 years combined. The Lithuanian government is also increasingly at odds with its neighbour. It's called the Belarusian President Alexander Lukashenko illegitimate. It's provided shelter for leading opposition activists, and it's blamed him for the upsurge in migrants. Now the Lithuanian Foreign Minister, Gabrielius Landsbergis, is in Turkey to try to find out where all the migrants are coming from. I'm Andrew Hopkins, and I've been speaking to him one-on-one. Foreign Minister, thank you for talking to TRT World. First of all, can you tell me what the current situation is in Lithuania? Are still hundreds of migrants coming?
Since it began in late May, we now have more than 1,700 people that illegally crossed the border between Lithuania and Belarus. Even though the numbers might not seem very high, especially to the countries who have experienced the flows of hundreds of thousands of refugees from Syria and other countries, the method that is being used against Lithuania is quite different than in other countries, meaning that Belarus doesn't have a border, neither with Syria, nor with Iraq, nor with Afghanistan. That means that it has to have a working operation of sorts in order to bring people in and show them to the border and actually create this sort of a pressing point against the European Union, against Lithuania, in order to change our policies. Therefore, we are not calling it a refugee crisis. We're calling it a hybrid attack, actually, against first of all, Lithuania and the European Union.
But you say this is all being sort of orchestrated by the Belarusian government. So what evidence do you have? Can you just explain to me in detail how this whole thing is being worked according to what you've seen?
Well, to our knowledge, and I mean, it's not conclusive. Lithuanian authorities have started an investigation into illegal trafficking and border crossing, so in the future we might know more. But at this point we know that several Belarusian governmental companies, government-owned companies like travel agencies, airway companies are participating in getting people from Iraq and from other countries, actually selling them tickets, overpriced tickets, so to say, of to get to via Turkey in some cases, or via other countries to Lithuanian border. We have actually even photo evidence or video evidence of Belarusian border guards covering tracks of illegal migrants crossing the border, in order for them to have a plausible, or at least a deniability that they haven't seen this. So immediately after the groups of people would pass, the border guards would come out with rakes and they would rake the ground in order for us kind of not to have an evidence. But since there are cameras, so we have quite good evidence on this.
So how are they getting them the migrants into Belarus in the first place? Because I imagine most of them would need a visa or some kind of travel document to do that. And then how are they getting them to the border? What's your evidence on that?
The thing is that Belarus now has a sort of this almost visa-free regime to a number of countries. That means that people can get visa on arrival. So basically you purchase a travel ticket, you travel, it can be via Istanbul even. If you don't leave a transit zone, that means that you don't need a Turkish visa as well. So basically you can travel from West Africa to Istanbul airport, and then from Istanbul, or Belavia, let's say, flight to Minsk. And then if you were a tourist, you would get a tourist visa on arrival. We're not sure whether they get it, because most of them don't need it, and I would say about 90% of people that cross Lithuanian border illegally are without the passport or any sort of document. So the only evidence that we have is from the questioning that our authorities are able to make. They spend a few days in Minsk in government-owned hotels or in apartments, and then they are by buses, they are transported to the border, shown transit points, given instructions on what to say, how to act when you see authorities, border guards, and this is where we see them and where we get in contact with these people.
So where are all these people coming from? What kind of countries are you finding they are arriving from?
The main group is coming from Iraq. Then we have groups of people that are coming from Western Africa, several countries in Western Africa. Now, new groups of people started emerging, mainly from Afghanistan. And we consider this a rather dangerous development. Therefore, I think that one of the reasons why I'm here today in Ankara is to find a solution that we could stop this route from growing out of proportion and out of possibility to control it as soon as possible. And I think that it's in all of our interests, Lithuanian or Turkish alike.
Now, your country in recent times, you haven't had a great relationship with Belarus. I think yourself, you said that Alexander Lukashenko, the president, is illegitimate following the election last year. You've provided a home to opposition activists, and now there's these EU sanctions following the incident with the commercial plane last year, which was diverted to Belarus so that an opposition journalist could be arrested. So I imagine you probably sort of expected some kind of retaliation, did you? Is that true? And what kind of thing were you sort of think would happen as a result of this?
I think that, first of all, we have to say that this is not the first time that this sort of attack was used against a European country. Now, we witnessed several years ago Russia using similar tactics against Norway and Finland. When hundreds of people in old cars or in bikes appeared on the border of both countries. So I think there was a test was done in the past how this might work. And what we're seeing now is an actual implementation of the whole strategy. So when we're expecting something, obviously, I mean, we have to admit that the regime is not a stable one. And the lightning and thunder, which sometimes reaches us from Mr. Lukashenko, it sounds very, very loud, but it's very difficult to ascertain, how far can he go? Actually, to be honest, nobody expected that the flight could be diverted on a false pretense, that the control center in Minsk would tell the pilot that there's an explosive on board in order to divert the plane and then take it down. So that was already crossing the line. So now we have to imagine that the regime is really ready to go really, really far. But then again, the question is, how do we react? And I think that the answer has to be swift and quite harsh.
So how does this situation end then? Does it end with Lukashenko leaving power, or just the end of the migrant crisis that you're facing at the moment?
I think that now our concern, our national concern, is to stop Lukashenko from having a possibility to arrange a route of illegal migration to Europe. Because it's not only Lithuania that's on a pinpoint, it's the European Union, because the sanctions are not Lithuanian sanctions. 27 countries had to agree on the sanctions. So that means that he's creating a pressure point on the European Union in order to change its policy. So we have to remove the pressure point, and therefore we need to disrupt the route. So that's the first thing. The second thing, you're absolutely right. Obviously, we're always saying that elections have to happen because it was stolen. Belarusian people still are waiting for an actual democratic election that they hoped to have last year.
Now, you've been reported as saying that some of these migrants are coming from Turkey as well. How is this work? What evidence do you have about that?
I would say that they are coming not from Turkey, at least from our information, but via Turkey. At least from the information that we had, up to 20% of reports that we managed to have while questioning the people that are already in Lithuania. Some of them actually have documents of being in Istanbul. Others claim that they came via Istanbul, and it's we're quite convinced that actually this is the route that they are traveling. That means that they would travel from Western African country to Istanbul, not leave a transit zone. As I said, this is the thing that they don't need any special visa or registration, and then travel to to Minsk and then to Lithuanian border. So this is actually becoming a route, and I'm absolutely convinced that nobody wants to be used as an instrument in another country's attack against another country. So kind of that this is where I see a common interest of us disrupting this route. And just to very briefly, now we have information about 28 flights that leave weekly from Istanbul to Minsk, and that's quite a huge number.
So almost it's like because Istanbul has become a travel hub over the year and there are so many routes out of Istanbul to so many parts of the world, then these people are trying to sort of take advantage of this situation. Is that how you see it?
Exactly. I mean, the Istanbul has become a hub between Africa, Asia, and Europe. And in one sense, it's a blessing, having a conveniently placed airport that connects so many cities and countries. But then again, a malign actor could use this sort of connectivity for its own purposes. That could be actually even criminal, if we're talking about human trafficking. So therefore, I mean, we have to be vigilant because, in many cases, I mean, openness invites not always best actors. So we have to keep our eyes open.
The Turkish government has said that people who are leaving Turkey going on to another country cannot leave unless they have valid documents for entry into the next country. So how is this being circumvented if they're coming through Turkey?
The thing is with Belarus that they have, and many countries actually can have this sort of rule, that it's called visa on arrival. That means that you are able to board the plane just with your passport, and when you arrive, you have to immediately go to a visa office and get visa in when you land. So this is sort of an arrangement that normally when countries adhere to the rule of law and we trust their authorities, that this is working. It helps to ease travel, but it also helps when you're using this not for good purposes, not for the real purposes that you promised. Actually, Belarus is saying that we're promoting tourism, but actually it's trafficking of illegal migrants.
So you've now had your meetings with the Turkish government. What did you find out? What did you agree, and what's going to happen in the future?
Today I'll be leaving Turkey and going to Iraq, to Baghdad, and I'm leaving quite on an optimistic note. I think we've agreed to cooperate, that we both governments see it as a problem, and we need to find a way how to solve this problem. And Lithuania proposed several measures that we think that could be implemented in order to disrupt this route. And as I said before, I mean, at this point I'm really optimistic that there is a possibility of common action and possibility of good result.
What kind of measures are you talking about?
Well, we've agreed on very specific thing that later this week a group of technical personnel from our border control and migration officers are coming to Istanbul to work together with Turkish authorities and try to find a concrete technical solution. My job was to establish a very clear political bridge between two governments, and I think, at least for my part, I'm convinced that we've managed to establish that. Now we need a specific set of actions that could be implemented as soon as possible, so that this route is not, as I said before, not growing out of proportion, especially when we're thinking about the new problems arising in Afghanistan and other countries.
I mean, it sounds like you would probably have to have some kind of sort of more restrictions or more controls over all those flights. I think you said 28 flights going from Istanbul to Belarus every week, I think it was. So there's going to have to be more controls on that. Is that something you're looking at?
Yes, I mean, this is what we put on the table. But now Turkish government has to decide, I mean, what's appropriate and what's not. I mean, the main thing is that we see a problem. Both sides see a problem, that there is a problem. So now we have to come up with a solution how to solve it. So we might suggest something, but it might not fit the legal system here in Turkey. But then again, I mean, Now, I think few days have to pass, especially after the visit of the migration officers and border guards, and then we'll see what the next steps could be taken.
You say you're going to Iraq after this as well. Have you spoken to the government there yet, and what have they told you about the situation there?
That's yes, I've spoken and I've met Iraqi foreign minister, and I've spoken with him on the phone. So we're meeting tomorrow. That will be a bit different discussion, since actually Iraq is one of the countries that actually provides migrants that are reaching Lithuanian borders. So we need to find a ways to again to disrupt the network that's being built up by Belarus in Iraq, in Kurdish lived areas especially. We need to disrupt it. We need to send a very clear message that this is not an easy route. This is actually a criminal offense to be traveling this way and crossing the border illegally. And we need to talk about possibility to return the people back. This is three-directional discussion that we're going to have.
So can you tell me a bit more about how the situation with Iraq is working, how people are coming from there to Lithuania?
What we know, what we managed to establish, that there are travel agencies in cities like Erbil, which actually sell tickets. The prices that we've heard are quite different. You know, we've heard numbers from 1,500 euros up to 15,000 euros. That provide them all the passage from Erbil to Baghdad, and from Baghdad to Minsk, either directly or via the stops, maybe in Istanbul, and then the passage to Lithuania. It's all organized in a sense. You know, it gives us. Why I'm saying that it's different. You know, when we were thinking about the migration crisis that Europe faced before, you know, we're thinking about these yellow or orange rafts, you know, full of people, you know, in Iraq clothes that are, you know, fleeing the hardship, the hardest days the world has ever seen since the Second World War. And but this is completely different. This is organized as a tour. You know, where you just walk in at the tour agency, you know, you buy a ticket, you know, you're given a bottle of water, you know, you're greeted when you land, and it kind of gives it an absolute different feeling that this is this is organized as a trip, you know.
So these companies in northern Iraq, they are you saying, working in conjunction with the Belarusian government, yes, and they are sort of selling these tours to people with a sort of a nod and a wink, if you like, saying you're going on a tourist, you know, adventure, a tourist trip, but it's not really a tourist trip. Is that what you're saying?
I think they are quite open with their clients. I mean, they're, you know, to an exterior, you know, they are presenting themselves as a tour agencies. But actually what they are selling, you know, they know what they're selling and people know what they're buying. So they are knowledgeable about that they are participating in the illegal activity, actually, even though that it looks quite fun and exciting. Might one say that, you know. So the people are greeted, and when they land in Minsk, they're greeted by a travel agent, you know, that gives them certain coupons for, you know, for stay at the hotel. So it's a strange new reality that actually is quite dangerous, and at first it's difficult to grasp because our imagination has different memories. I mean, our mind has different memories from, you know, several years past of different sorts of migrants and refugees that reached European borders.
As far as I know, the EU has sent 60 border guards, I think, to Lithuania, or is about to help you deal with this issue. You're putting razor wire on the border, but the longer-term view is you want to put a more permanent sort of structure there, a fence. So is this going to be enough? And how are you going to deal with this problem yourselves moving forward inside Lithuania?
Then again, I think that we are trying to send a very clear message that this is not a border to stop the migration, so to say, but it's a border to stop Lukashenko for using people against Lithuania as a human shield, so to say. You know, these terms are used in different occasions, but in this sense, we're feeling that this is something similar. So this is a border between Lithuania and what is the Belarusian regime. Whether it would be enough, it's still difficult to tell. We're trying to send a message to the people that they should arrive to Europe via legal ways. And just to be clear, Lithuania issued more than 2,000 refugee visas during the last few years. That's, you know, for our not so big country, that's a huge number. You know, and we've been accepting people, especially from Belarus and Russia. And we feel that it's an important mission again. But it has to be done in a regulated and legal manner.
According to what I understand, you're going to update the way you process migrants, people who arrive in your country, but it's been reported that your government says that most of these applications are likely to be refused. Is that the case?
It's the case actually everywhere in Europe, that what we're seeing is actually not the political migrants that are choosing this route. It's actually people who are seeking a better economic life. But then again, there are legal ways to do it. Not illegal ways, actually helping the regime to fulfill its needs and becoming an instrument in regime's policy.
Now, Russia and the president there, Vladimir Putin, very big supporters of the Belarusian government at the moment, and there's, I think, probably a split within the EU, of which your country is a member, of how to deal with Russia. Some countries, such as France, are talking about maintaining a dialogue. Other countries not so keen. So where does your country stand on that issue?
Well, even though we consider that dialogue is always an option, in some cases we have to remember why the official dialogue has stopped with Russia. And you know, it has to be reminded, I think, from time to time, because some politicians tend to forget that in 2014 territories of Ukraine were occupied with a military annexation, and they still are. Crimea and parts of eastern Ukraine are still under Russian control, and therefore renewing the dialogue with Russia, high political dialogue with Russia on a number of subjects that was suggested during the last Council of European Union, would send a message that strategic patience works. That means that you occupy parts of the country, then you wait for 7 years, and suddenly you have all that you thought that you've lost. So in general, it's a wrong message, and I think we need to find ways how can we send messages to Russian government. It's important to keep the line open. It was open even during the coldest days of Cold War, and now, I mean, the situation is different, so therefore I think that the lines have to be kept open. But then again, we have to be very clear on what kind of message are we sending and what kind of incentives are we giving out.
Lithuania was part of the former Soviet Union, and we've seen in recent years Russia, as situations have escalated, that, as you say, it's gone into Ukraine. It's also gone into what is recognized internationally as Georgia as well. So you're next door to Russia, and if this situation or something else in the future escalates, are you worried about your own country's future?
Well, I mean, we're part of NATO, and the alliance is the main guarantor of our safety. There have been discussions in the past that if not for NATO, there would be a big question whether we wouldn't have been already a target of Russian aggression. And you rightfully mentioned that in 2008, Georgia was the first target. Then came Ukraine. And but now we feel that NATO umbrella is protecting us quite safely. But then again, I have to add that in few months, just on the Lithuanian border, European and NATO border, one of the biggest military exercises will take place. It's called Zapad 2021, and the main participants is Russia and Belarus. And to add to that, the refugees, migrants, flowing from the border, the same border where they are doing this exercise, it creates a very huge risk of provocations, and the tensions will be high. So we have to be mindful about that as well.
Okay, Foreign Minister, thank you very much.
Thank you so much.